We are live. Fantastically exciting.
Yay! Oh,
I've
I see.
warned
There's a little
everyone.
red thing.
Yes, you see the little live. You can see people joining us. We get the really awkward first 1 to 2 minutes of
Yeah,
waiting for people to join us.
that's
But
right.
people are filling in, which is really exciting. I like to picture it like I'm actually in a room doing a book event or something, and like 9 people just showed up and took a seat, and that's really thrilling because I, like every author, have had events where 2 people came and one of
Yeah,
them didn't even mean to be there. So thank you so much to everybody who's joining us. We're going to get started in a minute. Today's Substack Live is going to last from noon to 12:45. We'll have 45 minutes to chat about, I'm sure in 45 minutes we'll cover it all. We'll be able to get into absolutely everything in 45 minutes. But no, I am here as the person who has a lot of enthusiasm and wants to learn with 2 subject matter experts in different ways. So I think this is going to be really a great conversation. Um, since it is live, that means that I am monitoring the chat here, and any comments or questions that you guys have, you can pop in, and I will try to, speak them and take your questions to the experts and get everyone answers. So
yeah.
please
Questions are
think of
great.
this as a conversation. Yeah. All right. Well, it's been a minute and a half, so we'll keep kind of reintroducing ourselves and reminding everyone why they're here for latecomers. But I think it'd be good to dive in. Thank you for joining us. My name is Andrea Bartz. I am a New York Times bestselling thriller author. I'm also somebody who's really passionate about AI and its effect in publishing, and specifically, activism and having control and agency over our own technology and how our works are used. So that was why I was really excited to put this together today. So I'm joined by Saul and Aurelio, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves and share why they're here, and then we'll dive into a conversation about what individuals who are concerned about generative AI can actually be doing on a truly, like, you can finish this call and start doing things, to live their values and to take their principles into action. So let's start with Saul.
Hey everyone, my name's Saul Austerlitz. I am a writer in New York. I've written 7 books and I write about popular culture. My most recent book is a real departure. It's called How to Assemble an Activist, and it's about my unexpected immersion in the world of political activism. I'm really excited to be here. I also want to say that, Andy has been doing this work for a while, and many of us writers are tremendously grateful to her for stepping forward and fighting the good fight against Anthropic, which is supposed to be the best of the AI companies, and yet was engaged in stealing all of our work for many years. So I'm just excited to be part of this conversation together with both of you guys.
Yeah, thanks so much. And to give the sort of sentence version for those who aren't familiar, I'm one of the named plaintiffs in Bart's v. Anthropic, which was the largest copyright settlement in history, in which Anthropic basically admitted, yeah, we stole your copies of your books, pirated copies of 500,000 or so books, and they're paying a $1.5 billion settlement to authors and publishers and other rights holders. So it's a really important first step. I'm very proud of what we have accomplished, but I also think it's a just first step. And I also think there's so much more to be concerned about than just how they obtain those materials. That's an interesting, important point. But what I really want to talk about is now looking forward. We're not putting the genie back in the bottle. AI is here. What can we doing about how it's potentially going to affect society and affect workers and authors and all those things? So yeah, Saul, thanks for being here. Aurelio, calling it all the way from Norway, which we're very
Yes.
excited and grateful about. Can you share a little about your background and your involvement in AI and why you're here today?
Yeah. So I'm from Norway, and I've been working with AI for a very long time. I recently finished 3 years of work with the Norwegian military, where I worked with implementing AI systems inside military NATO-based networks, and got to learn kind of every aspect of the AI technology through kind of its implementation in a closed system. It's very interesting. I then stumbled upon something called the Circle for Moral, the Moral Ambition movement, that seeks to take people with kind of academic backgrounds and move them from whatever job they're doing to working on saving the world. Without really knowing how, they just figured we'd put a bunch of people together and they'll figure it out, right? And in that event, I found a circle called the Users Union, started by Alexander Schmidt, and I joined it, and we aligned very much on our thinking. And we were later joined by, let's see, Dave Lacey and Janava Gilani, and the four of us are kind of the central committee of this newly started Users Union, where we are working to initially just think about how to protect the rights of people using tech in this new world of AI and algorithms. The rules are up in the air. They're new. These are all new paradigms, and we can barely hang on as the world kind of moves away from us. We need somebody thinking about this from the perspective of the user, not the perspective of the state, not the perspective of the company, but of us, of the people on the ground. And that was a very interesting project, and we're doing interesting work.
That's amazing. There's something really beautiful about this idea of we're going to throw all these smart people who have, big ambitions together and see what comes from that, because it feels a little bit analogous to what they did with AI, where they said,
Yeah,
we're going to feed it the entire internet and see what comes out of it. And I feel like a point that hopefully we're going to keep coming back to today is that, human companionship, human connectivity, human community is like what makes humans tick, what makes life worth living. And it's going to be why we need to be really careful with AI that kind of apes that really well, and also why sort of a key ingredient in the resistance. So I'll add too that some of you might be going, wait, what? Andy is doing a Substack Live with someone who like works it and uses AI. And so I just want to say that yes, I am a bigger doomer, I think, than Aurelio, but I think it's very important that we all um, keep the gates open to everyone who is interested in the same cause. I mean, my own partner works in AI, and I love her a lot. So I'm clearly not unable or unwilling to talk to people who have different views on the daily use of generative AI and LLMs than me. Let's focus on what we have in common and sort of the future we want to see. So to that end, I thought it could be great if Aurelio, you started with like a 2-minute primer on um,
sure.
the sort of short-term future we're looking at in regards to generative AI, LLMs, and why now is such a crucial time for us to be having these discussions and acting.
Yeah, thank you. As I said, it's a new paradigm. But the first challenge is that we're all experts on AI from science fiction. We've all read about it. We've all seen movies and television about it, and this kind of permeates society from the C-suits who have kind of their ideal of what they want to everybody else, to the government, to the military who wants like robots with machine guns, right? And we're not, you know, there's some things that are very relevant that we have to talk about, but we also have to kind of cut through a little bit of the nonsense and be very realistic about what the actual problem is, so that we can figure out clever solutions. So, you know, neighborhoods being filled with robots with machine guns isn't going to happen just yet. That's not a problem we have. Bipedal robots they aren't solved yet. They look good on the showroom floor, but you can't. And the models that people have brought home are pretty much useless. They can lift things and move them around, but they trip on sofas and they fall back if you move too close. We haven't solved how a robot that can lift something very heavy doesn't break a child's arm when it moves around. And that's going to take a while. It's likely we'll get there, but it's a matter of compute that has to be done externally, and how do you transfer that fast enough to something the frame of a human being is not solved. So we're looking at maybe 2030, maybe 2040 until bipedal robots become a thing, and then robots with machine guns is a real concern. But likely, they're more dangerous if you're a village in Uganda than if you're in the Western world. We're kind of privileged that way, and that people still kind of care about us, right? What is very relevant right now are the three pillars that my group, the users unions, have pointed out. And number one is the environmental impact, specifically considering the data centers that are being built in the U.S. alone. We're seeing now in the next year, 2027, we're seeing about 2% of U.S. GDP being used to build new data centers. That's $4 trillion. That's a tremendous amount of money. That is an incredible amount of money to be spent on one thing. It's more than the Manhattan Project. It's more than the railroads. It's more than not NASA, the moon landing. And right now they're building data centers, and right now we have the ability to mandate how those data centers should be built, and that's very important because of the way they're using water and the way they're using electricity. The second Our second pillar is kind of how this is affecting our youth. And now we're kind of moving away from AI specifically and into algorithms. But the point here is that AI is, it's a pretty fantastic technology, generative models, right? As I said, I'm not a doomer, right? This is a technology, the ability to have a conversation with a data set that knows everything, that's read every book and has a PhD in everything, is incredibly valuable and could supercharge humanity towards curing cancer, curing aging, empowering impoverished communities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the problem we have right now is not so much a problem with AI as it's a problem with capitalism. We are, as society is getting supercharged, all the problems of society is getting supercharged as well. We already had an issue with data centers. They were built for the internet, hyperscale centers. And now for AI, they're much more demanding, and the electricity use is much higher, and the water use is much higher. And we already had a problem with algorithms that are affecting children and adults, and now it's worse because they're using AI to fine tune the algorithms that kind of rule our day. So these are the kind of the three pillars. Where's my hand? Three there. That we're working on and trying to figure out smart and intelligent solutions to promote them upwards. And I believe that a good solution works very much on its own once you promote it enough. Things that, if you can take a problem and bring a solution to people that says this, where people can go, listen, this just makes sense. Let's just do this. I think that's going to be implemented very quickly. So that's kind of what we're trying to do over at the UU.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm hearing as well is that, if you start to try to take it all in and think about all of the risks at the same time and think about the killer robots and everything else,
Yep.
it can become very quickly overwhelming, and that can sort of
Yep.
lead to paralysis, I think. And so I'm
Yep.
going to come to you next to talk about kind of the human element of organizing in general and activism in general. And so sort of step one is, okay, let's focus on the immediate areas where we can actually have some kind of impact, and then narrow it down for ourselves. We can't deal with everything. So we're going to even further sort of subdivide what we're going to give our attention and our energy to, and then start to take steps from there. Is that kind of the approach you're promoting?
Yeah, I think so. I think, the AI challenge feels similar to me to the political challenges that we're experiencing right now, in the sense that it can feel so overwhelming, and it's so easy to say to ourselves, this problem is so much more vast than I am. It's so much bigger than anything I could possibly do. I'm just going to, take a passive role because there's no stance that I can take that will be beneficial. And I think that's incorrect. But I do think that the feeling of being a lone person tackling these giant, society-wide challenges can feel overwhelming and is ultimately not really the most productive stance to take. So I think the thing that I'd start with is just the notion of community, which feels so small, but is really essential. We fight by banding together. It means that someone can carry the torch when we need a break. It means that we can pool our collective resources. It means that we can think together about the effective strategies that can work. And I think one of the things that I want to emphasize is that we sometimes underrate ourselves, and we underrate our capacities for affecting change. The amount that, you and two other people can accomplish if you're really ferociously dedicated to working on a particular cause or a particular task is giant. It asks a lot of you for sure, but I think that sense of coming together and finding other people who are like-minded can go a really long way. So Aurelio, you were talking about the environmental impact, and that got me thinking about all of the well-established and relatively new environmental organizations that are out there that are doing commendable work, thinking about, how do we tackle climate change? What do we do about all the environmental impacts that are going to affect all of us and our families moving forward? And so, there's like national organizations like the Sunrise Movement. There's organizations closer to home where I live, like New Yorker News, that are very invested in the kinds of nuts and bolts of climate change legislation and about the details of how it might impact us. And um, I think that there are so many ways for people like us to plug in with those kinds of organizations to come to them and say, this is the issue that matters most to me, right? Like, I care a lot about the impact of AI because I worry about what are these data centers going to do to the environment? How are they going to impact our, accessibility to water or, whatever it is. And I think that, um, you know, trying to solve these problems alone is a recipe for feeling hopeless and feeling atomized. And to be perfectly frank, like, feeling hopeless and atomized is exactly what people with power want us to feel right now, right? The people
Yep.
in power in Washington absolutely want us to feel that way. And, I'm far from an expert on AI, but reading about the various tech moguls who have all pivoted very hard to the right very quickly, and the ways that they talk about the people who are, supposedly using their products, but seem to be more like the products themselves. They also want us to feel like, well, AI is going to conquer everything and take over everything, and there's nothing you can do about it, so you might as well just enjoy it. And I'm not sure that's the case. I think one small example that I'll bring in, just a sense of sort of homegrown, uh, not activism, but opposition, is every time I'm in my subway station close to home, there are all these ads for various AI programs, AI companies, and almost every single ad has some sort of graffiti drawn on it that says AI slop, or, like, blacking out the pictures of the people on it. And I think that it speaks to a real sense that there's something about AI that is trying to take away some of our humanity. And some of it may be overblown rhetoric. I don't know enough to say, but I think there is this sense that people want to protect humanity, like the things that make us human, against these inhuman larger forces, the political forces, the technological forces. And there are really ways to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you make a fantastic point that we already have an established network of environmental organizations. They're right there, and they've been fighting for a long time. They're organized, and they know how to get things moving. Right now, a 100 megawatt data center uses, what is it, 22 million gallons of water a year, which is more than 6,000 families, right? And we can change that if they just use radiator and closed loop technology instead of using evaporation. And that's just a little bit more costly for them. And they just won't do it because it costs a little bit more and nobody's telling them to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's popular. Oracle, an IT company, has already pledged they will only use closed loop water systems. Microsoft has tentatively said that they have a pilot program and they're thinking about it. They are testing the waters. This is a very winnable case. Getting closed loop water centers mandated, if we push enough, the majority of them will do it. Voluntarily, just to avoid regulation. But ideally, we get it passed through laws, both in the EU and the US. And it's right there because they know they're doing a lot of damage, and they know they don't need to. They know they could fix it with a. They know there's a fix there that wouldn't really cost them that much. That's very winnable. And the second one is the electric usage. There's already a system there in place, a voluntary system that where Google and Microsoft has done in the past, where they create an equivalent amount of solar panels for the amount of megawatt usage they have a year to feed the energy grid back roughly the same amount. They're not doing it with AI, but they could be, right? And we could mandate it. And actually, there's actually a law being passed federally. It's being suggested. Republicans are all going to vote no, of course. What if we pass it? We win. That's two pretty easy wins based on using organizations that are already there, already fighting, because it's environmental. So the call for community is absolutely the right thing to do right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think what's interesting is that, for me, my perspective is that the last 18 months, of American life, of the political changes have been pretty deeply sobering, and sobering in terms of thinking about like what a better future looks like. I aim to always be eternally optimistic or to find grounds for hope, and I think one of the things that I'd point to in regards to this particular issue is that the issue of AI data centers, interestingly, seems to scramble a lot of people's really solidly held political stances. And so places, in kind of like deep red small towns or deep red states, and people who identify as, I'm a hardcore 3-time Trump voter, I support MAGA, everything they do.
Triple Trumpers.
Yeah, they're also the people who are out there being adamantly opposed to the building of these data centers in their communities, often for reasons they may use different terminology, but they're essentially talking about the environmental impact of it. And so I think there's real opportunity there, in as much as a lot of people seem to have taken in the possibility of radical change in their immediate environs because of AI, whether it's the ways in which the actual, use of AI affects us, or whether it's the way it affects people in their communities. And people really hate it. They really, really don't like it, and they don't want it. And so that feels like a real organizing opportunity for a lot of us to find a way to connect with people, even with people who we might disagree with about many, if not most, other issues. They may very well feel very strongly that they don't want an AI data center, hoovering up all of the water and all the electricity in their communities.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I see Alex has a great question, which we are going to come back to. So that will be our next thing. But I want to ask, okay, so you guys are giving me hope. We're talking about things that are, hope is such a precious thing right now, as so many things seem to be bad. But let's say I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, I didn't know about the closed loop. I didn't know about the solar panel option. I want those two things. What are the actual steps that I could take after getting off this call today? Like, how do we actually begin to move towards those things instead of just being aware of them and hoping someone else does the work?
Well,
Kind of a
first of
question
all, I
for
would
both.
say, as Saul said, join an organization, like for instance the users union, but also environmental organizations that are much more established and have connections. Now, I was specifically talking about the Federal Grid Act S 3852. If we pass that one, then we mandate an equivalent in renewable energy for the data centers federally in the US. And of course, here in Europe, we should push for the same kind of thing to be done through the EU. Yeah, I mean, Saul said it. Alone, what can we do? We have to come together on this stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah. And this might feel obvious to you, but I want to really spell it out for those who haven't maybe been politically involved before. Like, okay, Saul, I wrote down S 3852. I have my bill now. What do I do with that? Who am I contacting? How am I making steps towards making that a reality?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the easiest next step is to identify who your elected representatives are. Your 2 senators and your 1 member of Congress in Washington, and also your state senator and state assembly person in your state capital. So you have, 5 people who are representing your interests in some fashion. And so they are there, or the people who work for them are there to hear what you think and what you care about. And you may think that no one is paying attention, but the reality is that phone calls to elected officials are very carefully tabulated and paid attention to. They are the exact way that politicians have an understanding of what it is that their um, constituents really care about. And the politicians care about it because those are the things that end up either getting them reelected or booting them out of office. So even having 10 people call in a given day about a particular topic in some sort of organized fashion, people in those offices take careful notice of that. And so one of the things that my political group is regularly working on is jumping on to like call trains that someone else has put together, where we try to get, okay, can we get someone to call every 15 minutes between 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.? So it's not that many people, but it can have a pretty substantial impact. So that's the first and sort of easiest thing. You call, you tell them, this is the bill that I've heard about. I really care about this issue. I'm a constituent and I'm a voter. I vote every election. This issue is the one that matters the most to me. Please come out, whatever it is, in favor of the bill, in opposition to the bill, depending on the circumstances. I think the other thing that I'd point to, so the next step out from that is that many of you may have been hearing about ways in which the question of support for AI or support for AI regulation has become a major issue in a lot of political races. The one that immediately comes to mind, I think I'm saying the right number, is New York 12, which is the district in Congress that represents like the Upper East Side of Manhattan and other areas. And there's a pretty giant campaign being funded by AI companies to bash one of the candidates in the race because he wants to engage in some kind of fairly common sense regulation of AI if he's, put in Washington. And so I think a really easy way to play a role here is to provide support to politicians who don't take money from AI companies and who want to regulate AI. There's tremendous money that's looking to keep these potential regulators out of office. And so anything that people can do to provide support for those candidates can go a long way. And again, you may think, oh, the AI companies have endless money. What can I do? But oftentimes, I think it's helpful to think about whose message needs the money in order to win people over and whose message sort of has an easier pathway. I think the
That's
message
true.
about regulating AI is something that people will really connect with once they hear it. And the message about, well, AI should just do whatever it wants forever is one that requires, tens of millions of dollars to try to convince people for. So even hosting a fundraiser for, someone who's running for office, whether it's in your community or somewhere else that is interested in regulating AI, you call up a friend and say, do you want to host a fundraiser together? You try to get 5 or 6 people to co-host. Here, for my purposes, co-hosting means, can you commit to raising whatever sum of money you're looking to raise? I'm often asking people if they could raise or donate a combination of $5,000, which is like a substantial amount of money, and also means if you could get 20 friends to put in $250, you've done it. So, I think thinking about ways to support those kinds of politicians, to show that, to provide them with financial support, to encourage people to vote for them if they're in your district. I think that kind of effort can go a really long way in terms of making sure that the people who represent us in Washington, the people who represent us in our state capitals, are thinking clearly and carefully about AI and understand that there's a tremendous groundswell of support for having common sense legislation that doesn't just allow AI to do whatever it wants, whenever it wants.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I comment on that? Because obviously this is easy for me to say. I live in a social democratic state, right? But I can't be politically neutral about this. You have to vote left. You have to vote for Bernie Sanders type candidate. You have to vote for Elizabeth Warren type candidate for no other reason than, one, they don't take corporate PAC money, which means AI can't give them money. And two, they seem to be the only political party out there or political coalition out there willing to actually enforce anti-monopoly and antitrust laws.
Mm-hmm.
Obama seemed like a great guy. He was very popular here in Norway as well. But when it came to the banks, he didn't break them up. And I don't understand how a bank could be too big to fail and still be allowed to stay at that size. It doesn't make any sense to me. And it seems that you guys have a real corporate money problem over there. And it seems that that right now, that's the faction that has the only cure to it. And the only ones who are actually willing to look at big AI companies and say, you're too big, you have too much monopoly, you're going to have to go Google North, Google South, Google East, Google West, or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and actually mean it.
Just adding to that, I will say that the political balance of AI seems to be changing in real time here. And so the candidate that I was talking about who's running for Congress in Manhattan is not necessarily, his name's Alex Boris. He's not necessarily the farthest left candidate. He's just the one who's actually talking about AI, in part because he used to work for an AI company. So
Right. I just don't know what farthest left means anymore. I just want honest people who believe in what they say, right?
That's sort of what I'm saying here as well. I 1,000% agree with you that I'm only talking about, for myself, I'm only talking about voting for Democratic politicians. But
Yep.
you think that the AI issue seems to be one that candidates across whatever spectrum of the left or center that we want to describe um, are invested in, and it doesn't seem to always clearly map onto, okay, you're progressive, you're moderate. It seems to be more scrambled than that, which I think honestly presents ordinary people like ourselves with a lot of opportunity to talk to politicians, because
I think,
AI
yeah,
is such a new issue, at least for
yeah.
like the political class, that I don't think their stance has gotten fully baked in yet.
I think most people largely agree, especially when you present them with the problems and the solutions, almost no matter where they are on the spectrum. But the politicians is another matter, uh,
Yeah. You
unfortunately.
said, yeah, you used the phrase corporate money problem that we have in the US, which I think is absolutely true. I think we see, especially with these AI companies, how quickly they shunted themselves to the right, sensing this friendly kind of anti regulation environment. And I feel like part of why we can feel overwhelmed and afraid to actually jump into the fray is like that David and Goliath, issue that's all you were
Yep.
talking about from the start of, well, they're not going to listen to me. I mean, popularity doesn't actually mean anything. Look at Trump's ratings, and no one's even trying to impeach the guy. Like, it can feel that way. And to that, I just want to say again, like, this is about us finding narrow, specific ways to get involved, not feeling overwhelmed. If the $5,000, per person thing sounds so high that you went, well, I could never ask that of my friends. Okay, what about $500? Like,
Yeah.
every little bit is going to help. And so it's about sort of right sizing it to the kind of approach you think you can take. I want to read Alex Schmidt's question because I think it's good. And Aurelio, I think it's relating to what we're talking about. And I would love to hear your take on it first. Alex says, one thing I often ponder is how to even think of or understand these issues. I think one barrier to action is exactly the feeling that it's opaque. Is there room for some sort of simplified framework that helps people understand? I think that's such a great question because it goes back to that the big tech companies want us to feel like I can't even get anywhere near that. It's just too big and it's inevitable and I don't even understand it.
Yeah, that's a great question. Alex is my partner in crime in the UU. She's an incredible initiative person, full of energy. In Norway, we have a saying called "pågangsmot," which means like on forward courage, and she has that plenty. It's a great question. There's no answer to that question because nobody understands this yet. And as I said earlier, we all think we're experts, and so does the C-suits. And I've been in those rooms. I've been the tech guy trying to explain to 60-year-olds how this actually works and what it can actually be used for, and they don't get it. Even their scientific cultural understanding, sorry, their science fiction understanding is outdated. They're thinking about Star Wars and like like it's difficult to reach these people. So what they want is to eliminate workers, and they think that's a thing that can be done. It can't, for the most part. Now, if you work at a call center and there's 10 workers and everyone gets between 150 and 200 calls a day, and you know more than that, then yeah, those jobs can maybe you can create an automated service for half and then keep 5 people left for the people that aggressively click on I want to talk to a person, right? But I'm a developer, and yeah, if you ask me to create a module, right, the AI could do in a day what it takes me 3 weeks to do. But my work doesn't stop there. That's just 1.0. I can just keep working. I can just make a better version, right? And the argument that people have is like, oh, but what about but it can make it. It's like we'll run out of work. Like, no, humanity is not going to run out of work anytime soon. We don't have cities on Mars yet. We haven't cured cancer yet. We haven't, there's a lot of work left done, and for the most of us, working with AI is going to be a good solution. But the problem is the people in charge don't know that, and they don't see it. They see I can make a lot of money if I eliminate payroll. And that's going to be a problem because they're going to try anyway. And are those jobs going to come back when they fail? Probably not. And, for my part, learn AI. And, you know, I, I don't believe in accelerationism, right? The idea of an AGI, some magical AGI is not going to happen. And for the simple reason that progress is not going faster. Like the idea was an AI would begin to improve itself and then it would completely take over that improvement process and eventually become super intelligent, right? But it's not going faster because Grok, for instance, the pre-training for Grok cost Elon Musk 10,000 H100 cards, and each one of those cards is $100,000 each. That was the pre-training corpus for Grok, which is now an old model. So he needs 4 times that much to have an exponential improvement on the next model. Now, there are improvements that can be made in software, but those are marginal. They're 20%, 30%. You want 10x, you need more compute. And we're running out of compute on planet Earth. So by 2030, we're going to reach a point where the models aren't really getting any better. It'll be like the new iPhone. Like the next one is pretty much the same as the old one. And at that point, the open source models will be pretty much the same as the proprietary ones. And that's very beneficial because the one job that you can replace very quickly is the CEO, right?
That's very
I
scary for the CEOs.
exactly, right? Why don't I just take 4 of my friends and start a consulting firm instead of working for a guy?
Yeah.
If that benefits me more. Well, I couldn't because I don't know how to start a business. And it's that part, finance is very opaque. I typically need to hire a lawyer, hire an accountant, and hire a consultant. I don't anymore. AI can just tell me what to do. That's incredibly empowering once you get there, but we're not quite there yet. And this period we're in now is the most dangerous period because they might take away open source model. They might close it. And that's very, very bad.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, I think maybe all of us can answer this too, is let's say you have an uncle who just is like, AI, I don't know if that's anything. I don't think I need to worry about that. And I think a really important conversation we all need to be having is, well, here's why this is important, kind of how we opened this conversation today. Here's why this is important. Here's why we need to be paying attention to it now. Here's why this is a crucial time to ask. And I think we can probably tailor how we would explain to said uncle why this is really important for the environment, why this is really important for workers, why this is really important for human psyches and, youth and sort of that like human connection companionship thing. But do you have, and so maybe you can start because you're sort of the expert in big picture, bringing people in and getting people to understand why they need to care about these causes. Do you recommend you have your one sentence point about the environment and why AI is really impactful and we need to care now? Like, do we sort of hone a few talking points in order to start the conversations with people? What's the way to actually like bring people in?
Yeah, I think having a personal story is a way in that really connects with people, right? You can sort of have your big picture policy analysis, and that can be really helpful. But I think hearing from people who are telling you, I care about this because I'm worried about how it's going to affect my children, or I'm worried about how it's going to affect, my community. I think that ends up being much stickier and connecting with people much more. So, one of the things that I was thinking about was that the conversation around technology often has this sense of like, well, it's relentless, like it'll never change. And then things do change. And so one thing that I was thinking about was the conversation around cell phones and social media and kids. And so even a few years ago, my kids are 14 and just about 10. And like there was this conversation of like, well, every kid has to have a phone because they just have to. And every kid has to have unfettered access to social media because otherwise they'll be left behind and other kids, they won't know what other kids are up to. And then there started to be conversations and books that were written and a little bit of a snowball effect of parents saying, is this stuff good for my kids? Like, am I happy with them having, being on Instagram at age 11? And I think some real world changes have resulted as well. And so I think similarly here, I think everyone is thinking about this separately in their own separate box. And so a first step can just be, again, as kind of a community building exercise. It could be sending out an email. It could be inviting people to come sit in your living room and just talk a little bit about, well, what are your concerns? What are you worried about right now? What are you thinking about in terms of how this might impact our jobs or our children or our communities? And, giving people some suggestions for next steps, like we talked about. Do you want to come to the next Sunrise or New Yorker News or whatever environmental group event? Do you want to arrange that we're all going to call our member of Congress tomorrow? Do you want to host a fundraiser for a candidate? I think that there's sometimes this impression that people have of like, well, if I'm doing activist work, I'm bothering people. I'm annoying
Mhm.
them, showing up in their inbox. I'm texting them. I'm calling them. I'm bugging them on the street. And
You're that guy.
I'm bothering them and they just want me to leave them alone. And sure, that sometimes happens. I'm not going to say it never happens. But most of the time, when I reach out or the people I work with reach out to offer something to people, usually even if they don't want to do it, they're glad to know that it exists. It makes them feel better to know that people care and are doing something about issues that they care about. And oftentimes the response is gratitude. Like, thank you for doing the research that I couldn't do or wouldn't do or didn't have time to do. So that now I know, okay, here are my 4 options of ways that I can plug in. And maybe I'll do all of them and maybe I'll want to do them, but won't quite get to them. But you're sort of helping people save time and energy, and you're helping them understand a really complicated problem and saying, okay, here are actual like real world tasks that you can take on. So I think taking that first step and having the sort of audacity to reach out to people who may not have heard you talking about AI or technology before and just saying, I'm really worried about this. Do you want to chat further? I think oftentimes people will respond with gratitude, sort of out of keeping with how much effort you actually have to put in, because someone has to take that first step. And it's often frightening to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, my partner and I are planning to, have a night where we have friends come over. We're gonna make them a chill dinner, and then we're gonna watch the AI documentary together, the AI doc, or How I Became an I can't Apocalyptimist, there it is, which I
There
we
it
can
is.
but and then we're gonna have a discussion, and so it's a way to get together, see some friends, have a lively conversation, and take it from there, and I think community is so big for all of us. We're down to our last few minutes, and I do think it's very important that in addition to we have some sort of specific steps people can take if the environment is the element they want to focus on. I'd love to just finish with if you decide that for you the human piece, the youth's mental development, the people feeling cut off from other people, and AI psychosis, and the human element is more what's freaking you out. What are some steps you can take to try to make steps in the right direction?
Well, let me approach that conversation in a different way. When it comes to having talk, talking with someone who's saying, it is what it is. Things are changing. I can't do anything about it, and with that exact focus. Do you remember when YouTube was filled with cat videos and win compilations? That was a time when the algorithm was based on our upload and download, and that was the algorithm. That doesn't exist anymore. Up, Upvote doesn't do anything. Downvote doesn't do anything. Now it's a dark pattern algorithm based on the thing that retains the most attention, which tends to be outrage and sadness and things that are tribally dangerous, right? And that algorithm is incredibly damaging for adults and grown-ups alike. But I'm very optimistic about it because I can imagine a better world. I can imagine a consensual pattern to that algorithm, which not only would that be better, but what if we had control of our algorithm? What if I could end it, I could delete it and start anew, or I could save it and have multiples and switch around, and I could. What if I could trade algorithms with other people? Somebody could give me a all cat videos algorithm, or one that's political news straight down the center, or whatever it is. More control. They would make more money if they did algorithms like this, but they haven't because they're so obsessed with making retention money right now because that's what the consultants are telling them. So I'm optimistic about the possibilities as long as we can present them and people can hear about them and we can kind of push that message upward.
I love the optimism, and I think especially for this community of a lot of writers, we kind of understand that like as fiction writers especially, we have the privilege of being up in people's imaginations. Like writing is so important because we help people envision a different world and see that things don't need to be the way that they are, and it's why it's such a crucial field.
I'm
Um,
not a writer, but that's why I love sci-fi so much.
yeah, right? It's very relevant to what we're talking about. Saul, do you have any kind of closing thoughts on that specific issue of we've talked about the environment. If somebody says the social elements are where I want to focus, here's a step you could take.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly really excited, Aurelio, about what you and Alex and your colleagues are up to. I think the idea of a users union is something whose time has come, and the notion of having tech users band together and figure out ways to wield collective power feels exceptionally exciting. And I think that there's a tremendous amount to be done with that. So, yeah, that really feels to me like the next big step, and I'm very hopeful and optimistic for everything you guys are currently working on.
Yeah, I love that, and I will
Thank you.
absolutely
Appreciate that.
link it in our show notes. We have to
No
wrap. I
time for
really
questions.
thank you
8
guys for
seconds left.
if there's any, yeah, final questions, throw them in. But I wanna say thank
Mhm.
you to both of you, and, if you can both just quickly, remind listeners, readers, where they can find you online and, plug anything you'd like to plug, I would love to do that. Saul, do you wanna start with, your sign off?
Yeah, you can check out my book, which Andy is helpfully holding, called How to Assemble an Activist. You can also find me on Substack. I'm part of the Ministry of Pop Culture Collective.
Awesome.
I'm at
Yeah.
we're at theusersunionn.org, users with an S. I'm also on Substack, Aurelio Aguirre on Substack. How do you spell that? I have no idea. It's a Latin American name. It's just a lot of vowels. I don't know. There's a link somewhere.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to both of you. Thank you to everyone for joining. We're going to keep this conversation going with future posts, with comment on the post. I want everyone to keep talking. But I really appreciate both of you for bringing your expertise and your A games today, and to everyone for listening in.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks,
Thank
Andy.
you very much, Andy.
You
Bye.
all.